Live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Anthony and I'll be your host and MC for today. I'm a product manager here at Retool where I focus on enabling our customers to build software for their customers. Previously, I was on our go-to-market team where I had the pleasure of learning about thousands of prospective customers' pain points and use cases for Retool. This is a huge moment for Retool today. We've historically been a platform for building internal tools, helping companies build thousands of admin panels, customer support dashboards, and more. And now we're going to share how a few of our customers are using Retool for external use cases and talk about the new stack to build customer, partner, and vendor portals using Retool. Let's dive into the agenda. So today you're going to hear about Retool's story, how we're empowering businesses of all shapes and sizes with new ways to build software, and you'll hear some amazing stories from our customers. Malcolm Green, Senior Vice President of Engineering at Orange Theory Fitness, is going to talk about how they're deploying Retool applications to 1,600 fitness studios worldwide. Mike Madison from Proga Digital is one of Retool's most prolific builders and has built hundreds of Retool apps using pretty much every Retool feature known to the world. And Ankush Agarwal, the founder of Co-Create, is an early beta customer and has been able to iterate the fastest out of any other customer I've seen using Retool Embed. In between our speakers, we're also sprinkling in some live coding sessions. We'll show you how to build customer portals from scratch and add new functionality to your products with embedded Retool apps. We'll also have time for live Q&As during each session, so if you have questions, go ahead and add them into the Q&A section of the chat by clicking the question mark in the top right corner. So let's get started. For those who aren't aware, Retool has historically been a platform for building internal-facing software. When we were founded, we started with a super flexible drag-and-drop app builder to allow companies to build fully custom UIs on top of their data. It made up and still makes up a core part of our platform. But since then, we've expanded into supporting mobile apps for field teams and warehouse workers, backend logic and scheduled jobs with workflows, and storage with our new Retool database product. And so effectively what we ended up with were the building blocks of a full stack platform to build internal software for pretty much any kind of use case. We've been fortunate enough to improve each part of the Retool platform for companies like Amazon, DoorDash, Amex, the largest companies in the world who trust us and have pulled us to do even more with them over the years, extending us further beyond internal tools. And the reality is that a lot of customer-facing software uses the exact same technical frameworks and has the exact same manual processes as internal-facing software. Code gets stale, tribal knowledge gets built up, people move around, you lose context. It's super painful, and you have to wrangle with a bunch of UI frameworks, middleware, things that you're constantly learning on the fly. But with Retool, you could build the same software much faster. You can read and write to your data sources and APIs. You can use a drag and drop interface with pre-built components to design your application, and you can hack Retool. You can add JavaScript, Python, and SQL anywhere inside of the product to add business logic that you need. And then you could safely roll out your applications to production to thousands of users. So today, we're excited to announce that we're building first-class support for just that, dashboards, workflows, and features for pretty much anyone who touches your business. And we've already seen some very common use cases. Our customers are building portals to let their clients upload invoices, submit project reports, or they're embedding Retool dashboards to help surface store sales, since it's easy to write SQL directly in Retool against your data sources. And customers like Greenly have built entire customer onboarding journeys using Retool applications that they then embed into their product. So I've been mentioning kind of portals throughout this presentation, and why portals? Well, despite the progress we've seen in internal tools, there's also a massive amount of external custom software being built for developers, partners, and vendors. And so for us, portals are a really great wedge into that. Portals are built for productivity, typically made up of forms, tables, and charts, and they're also built around data. So they orchestrate data from multiple sources and bring that into one place. Most Retool applications do this. They talk to APIs, they talk directly to databases, they talk to Salesforce, and they surface all of that data in one place for teams to operate more quickly. And so that's sort of the bread and butter of Retool. And based on what we've been building, we've already knocked out some of the harder challenges around building this software. And now we're taking the existing Retool platform and are adding capabilities to let us make Retool your product. Today, we're shipping 2 ways to extend Retool to your customers, vendors, and partners. Retool portals are the way to build end-to-end customer portals where Retool manages the user experience from email invitation to login to the actual applications themselves. Retool Embed lets you augment your existing web apps with the speed of Retool. And to give you a better sense of how portals and embed work, I'm going to share a quick demo of applications built with each. Let's start with portals. Let me go ahead and switch tabs. Okay, make sure I have the right application. Great. So Retool Portals allows you to build any kind of customer portal using Retool. And Retool manages everything from login to email invitations to white labeling to the actual app experience. So let's say I'm Pharmaco. I provide a great website for folks like you and me to create prescriptions, refill orders, and more. But behind the scenes, there's a whole lot of software that I need to build for my pharmacists. They need to go ahead and onboard new patients, create new orders, deal with insurance claims. And so this class of software is really interesting. It's in between sort of this customer-facing software and internal tools. We call it kind of internal adjacent. And so pharmacists using Retool can log in with built-in SSO or SSO integrated with any identity provider or username and password. So I'll go ahead and sign in. Once I'm logged in, I should be taken to a home screen that's all built in Retool. And pharmacists can see applications that are tailored to their user role because Retool manages permissions and you can control what users see based on those permissions. So pharmacists can do things like search patients, fulfill prescription requests, and modify existing ones. So I'll go ahead and dive into the Orders Hub. The Orders Hub is a step-by-step application to let pharmacists search patients, edit information about those patients, and create orders. So the application that you see is built all in Retool, and it's customized to match the look and feel of my Pharmaco customer-facing website. So I can go ahead, search for a user, enter in an order detail, pulling in data directly from my data sources, adjust dosage amounts, even confirm orders. And all these components that you're seeing are all built using Retool. So there's nothing that you really have to maintain. But once I submit this form, I'm writing directly against my data sources using API requests. And you'll notice that the application updates once I've successfully submitted this order and generated a PDF. So pharmacists here have an end-to-end platform built in Retool to let them do their jobs more effectively. And I can build something like this within hours. And here, Retool, again, is managing the entire user experience, right? It's taking in pharmacists, it's defining specific user roles that you can go ahead on the kind of the back end. You can specify that in your identity provider inside of Retool directly, and Retool takes control of the entire experience. But a lot of our customers might already have an application that they're using, right? And they might want to augment that application with existing Retool applications that they have internally, bring that in and add features to their product faster and drive top line. So that's exactly why we built Retool Embed. Now I'll go ahead and share my screen and give a demo of that. Retool Embed is all about augmenting your existing software. So sometimes adding new features is quite painful. Sometimes you don't have the right resourcing. But with Retool, since you can build applications within hours that are extremely powerful and highly customized, you can embed them directly into your product and make them look and feel exactly how your product does. So let's take an example. Shopko is a food delivery platform, think DoorDash, that also builds software for people like you and me to order takeout. Behind the scenes, they also have merchants. They have folks who are online, fulfilling orders, cooking food, etc. And so they've built a merchant portal for restaurants to manage sales, refund orders, and drive new business. What you see here, this login screen is built by Shopko. This is a React application that uses Auth0 behind the scenes. And Shopko, we've already built out this auth. So we want to kind of keep it. We have all of our users in there. It makes sense for us to sort of maintain the core app experience. But as a merchant, once I log in, I'm taken to the merchant portal. So what you're seeing on the outside is a React application, but what you're seeing on the inside is Retool. And so you'll notice that the Retool application is customized to match the look and feel of my Shopko portal. And this application is loaded in securely. So I, as a user, have been defining Retool. I also am only able to see the stores that are relevant to me, the stores that I manage. And that's because with Retool Embed, you can pass along data that allows you to filter to make sure that user A doesn't see user B's data. So it's not spoofable by any bad actor. And so as I'm navigating in between these applications, I'm loading in embedded Retool apps. And so if I want to add a new feature that I want to upsell a customer in the future and drive top line, again, I could do so with hours without requiring 50 people in the room, a product manager, designer, engineering. An engineer can go ahead, build this, get some feedback, change some colors, change some designs, move things around, and be able to iterate extremely quickly. And we'll talk about how that happens at Co-Create in a later session here. But so that's the idea of Retool Embed. Retool Embed is really about augmenting existing software. Retool Portal's really about building net new software from scratch. So I'll go ahead and share my demo screen here. Great. So just as a recap, Retool Portals allows you to ship secure portals for customers, vendors, and partners, where Retool manages the sign up, the onboarding, the auth, all out of the box, and you don't have to build it yourself. Retool Embed lets you augment the software, existing tools, existing web applications with dashboards that are built in Retool and easily embeddable inside of your product. So that wraps up Retool's backstory and the two products that we're releasing today. We're really excited to welcome Malcolm Green, Senior Vice President of Engineering at Orange Theory, to talk about how they're shipping apps to more than 1,600 fitness studios worldwide. Orange Theory is an awesome Retool customer, an example of an organization who leverages Retool both internally and externally. I'll definitely let Malcolm share more on this, so let's quickly review the agenda. We'll be talking about the unique business challenges that Orange Theory faces as a company with a global footprint. And for such an ops-intensive business where there's so many people involved, we'll also learn where software gives them the biggest advantage and also where Retool helps. We'll also get an exclusive demo of the apps that are being rolled out to all these studios as we speak. And of course, we'll leave time for a short Q&A session at the end. Malcolm, super excited to have you. Been working with you for quite some time at Retool. Are you online here? Great. Do you want to give a quick backstory maybe about you, Orange Theory, and your journey with Retool?
That's great. Can you go to the first slide?
Yep.
Is there a way I can see this slide blown up?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, great. So a little bit about me. I'm the SVP of Engineering at Orange Theory, and my team is responsible for all the internal and external facing applications that Orange Theory delivers. So that's our websites, our email platform, our mobile apps, and then all the in-studio technology that I'll talk about in a moment. So Orange Theory Fitness, our mission statement is to help people live a longer, more vibrant life. I'll put that in a slightly more modest way. It's the best damn 60-minute workout you're going to get in the fitness industry. So who we are. Orange Theory is a franchise-based business. We were founded in 2010, and our original founder is still with the company, and an active CTO, David Long. We support over 1,600 connected fitness studios. I'll talk about the connected fitness experience in a second. And our footprint is across 23 countries. And we're currently serving almost 1 million active members. So what do we do and what makes Orange Theory unique? Well, we're a small footprint, coach-led, studio-based experience. Our members come in and do a class-based workout. Our workouts are science-backed. We monitor your real-time heart rate. To the bottom right is an example of our heart rate monitors that track your heart rate during your workout on a second-by-second basis. Our niche is high-intensity interval workouts, and we combine both cardio and strength training in that 60-minute workout. And in the upper right, you can see a photo of one of our studios. And our workouts consist of moving between 3 stations, connected treadmills, connected rowers, and then we also have a floor-based workout where you do body weight and dumbbell weight exercises. And each class is unique, and it focuses on a specific combination of cardio and strength-based training. Can you bump me to the next slide, please? So what is Orange Theory's low-code strategy? I believe we're pretty unique in the industry in that we believe low-code is not just for our internal apps, but we can use a platform like Retool to deliver enterprise apps to both our internal users and to our franchise-based network users. Our strategy is to move away from large monolithic, traditional CRM-like applications. And I'll speak to the one that we built internally. We spent several years and about a team of 30 people working around the clock to build our CRM application. And we believe we can replace probably 80 to 90% of that functionality through a small suite of low-code micro apps that are task-specific, very focused applications that are easy to use and also fast to build and distribute. Another benefit of our low-code strategy is we're focusing on a single development stack for both internal and external applications. I think I just mentioned that. And we're really leveraging the rapid pace that you can get from a low-code based platform like Retool. So our cycle is to quickly prototype, pilot, and deliver. And we're seeing a lot of velocity with that very agile, fast-paced cycle. That's compared to, in our CRM world, a 2 or 3 week base sprint with many different teams working together to deliver a small amount of functionality. And to kind of sum up what we believe the benefits of a Retool platform is, we believe that we can get and we can follow that famous 80-20 rule, but we believe we have the opportunity as we get moving to have a efficiency factor of 90-10. So we can get 90% of the benefits with 10% of the effort and investment. And that may be even conservative as well. So we're expecting and experiencing a big productivity gain from Retool. So why did we choose Retool? There's a lot of different low-code platforms out there, and we looked at a lot of them, and many are very solid. But there's some things unique to Retool that really allows us to leverage it for the strategy that I just mentioned. So Orange Theory is very security minded and focused, and having a self-hosted option for security and compliance was really important to us. We also wanted to be able to integrate with our Microsoft Enterprise platform. So as Anthony mentioned at the beginning of this, the importance of portals. We leveraged the Microsoft MyApp application portal to deliver our micro apps, and Retool integrates with the Microsoft platform and the Microsoft single sign-on support very well. As I mentioned in the previous comments, we like the fact that Retool supports multiple platforms. So web and mobile are on our radar to start, and we know that tablets coming in the near future, so we're excited about that as well. The other feature of Retool, which is great, is the ability to connect to everything in our ecosystem. So this gives us the ability to leverage a lot of our content across the board. Now we're starting specifically leveraging data in our Snowflake data warehouse, but we expect to expand this capability to connect to our new microservice layer that we're currently building at the moment. There's also a large and rich collection of components that will allow us to deliver some very rich-facing apps. The app I'm going to show you today is one of our first, and so it's more of a simple app, but we have a lot of other applications that are more complex in the works. The other really unique feature of Retool is the ability to componentize query and resources into reusable components called modules. And so this allows us to leverage and reuse a lot of functionality and guarantee consistency across our applications, which is both an accelerator and just a general development good practice. A game changer for us with Retool is Retool's write back capability, which is allows us to deliver actionable analytic data. So when we started our analytics journey at Orange Theory, we built our analytic applications and dashboards and reports on top of Power BI and Domo. And these were visual, great ways to render analytic information visually. But then someone would have to look at that data and switch apps to actually work with that data. You're kind of moving between multiple apps to carry out a specific workflow. But by supporting write back data, we can both display critical business information and make that actionable within the same application. So that is a big efficiency improvement and a much better user experience. And finally, just a shout out to the Retool team on this call. Retool has really been a partner for us. This just hasn't been a client-vendor relationship, but as Anthony said, we've worked really closely with Anthony and their development teams to really help Retool grow the product in a way that will benefit Orange Theory, but also in a way that we believe will benefit all of Retool's enterprise customers. We're not looking for Orange Theory specific capabilities. We want to see the tool continue to grow so that it gets the most exposure and the best feedback from a very large and broad audience. Can we jump to the next slide, please? So this is where we would normally do a live demo. Murphy's Law, we had some technical glitches here, both with the browser and our local environment. So I'm going to show some screenshots and speak to those. And so bear with me while I do a screen share. Can everybody see a screenshot? Anthony, can you give me a verbal yes or no?
Verbal, confirmed.
Okay, great. So this was our plan B, and I apologize to the audience. This was, like I said, a last-minute Murphy's Law challenge with our browser and security systems and the display or presentation software that we're using on this call. So what I'm showing you right now is a Microsoft My Applications portal. So I did a quick screenshot here of what the application I'll be showing you through screenshot looks like. Our typical prod screenshots would have 8 or 9 of these individual tiles that would correspond to individual micro apps that are very task focused. So we have, for example, a lead management application. We have a member management application. We have a studio portfolio application. So we have a collection of applications that users can choose from, as well as a bunch of just off-the-shelf applications that we make available to our studios through standard Microsoft Enterprise single sign-on capabilities. And then, of course, our internally built apps that we've developed in the past. So anyway, clicking on one of these tiles will take us into the specific Retool application. And this is just a shout out to the Retool functionality that's being announced on this call, which is the ability to embed Retool applications into other systems and portals. So instead of using the Retool based portal, as many of you on this call may be using right now, we're going to go right from this tile into the Retool application specifically without any Retool branding or a second portal to work through. So this is our lead management app, and it covers the 80-20 rule, or maybe the 90-10 rule, of how our network users, our sales associates, manage our leads in the studios. And so what we see here, and again, apologies, this I had to do these screenshots really quick when we ran into the tech problem. So we don't see these gauges working like they do in a live app. But what we're looking at right now on this dashboard is a quick health check of where we are with our lead follow-ups and our lead conversions. And if you look in the upper left, you'll see the dashboard right under lead management. And we're looking at the dashboard that users will see when they enter this application. Now, prior to Retool, this was implemented in Domo. And this was just a dashboard that people would look at, and then they would toggle over to our monolithic CRM and start to work off of the content they were seeing here. But because we have the write back capability of Retool, we're able to integrate everything into a single app. So I'm going to click on the Leads No Intro Booked tab on the top. And this gives us a view of all the leads that have come into the studio, but they have not booked an intro. So these are leads that we want to follow up on, through a phone call, through an email, through a text. And as a studio manager, you want to be able to evaluate the efficiency of your staff and how you're progressing on, how you're making progress on this lead follow-up. So what we're seeing here is a table. We're seeing lead names. These are test data, just for the record, of leads that are pending in this studio. We have the ability to prioritize these leads. We see as I'm going left to right from columns, we can see when the lead arrived. We can see when they were last contacted within our monolithic or traditional CRM. And when one of these leads is contacted, we can click in the very first column, complete, and basically we put a check mark there. And what that will do is associate the sales associate with that lead and remove this lead or indicate that this lead has been contacted and take it off the board for follow-up. I'm going to speak to another portion of this dashboard, and in the upper left, right beneath the dashboard, or the individual tabs that move us across different parts of the display, you'll see a Studio Select, and that allows us, or allows our studio associates and studio managers to choose a specific studio. So some of our studios are owned by franchises that own multiple studios, and this gives those ownership groups a way to work across studios very efficiently by choosing the studio they're looking at. And it also gives the management teams the ability to quickly look across studios very efficiently. I'm going to move to the next tab, which is appointment confirmations. So what this particular tab shows us is the ability to confirm a sales associate's contact with a lead and the lead's decision to book a free intro class at a particular studio. And this is critical to our business model because we believe if we can bring you into an intro class, we believe we can convert you to a happy customer. And so making sure that we convert those leads from the first tab where there's no intro booked into leads that have booked an appointment and that we have confirmed with them. So we've done a follow-up to make sure that they are engaged in that or prepared for that first workout. They have the right clothes, they're arriving at the right time, and answer any questions that they have prior to arriving at one of our studios. I'm going to jump to the next tab. And this is showing leads that booked the class, but for whatever reason weren't able to attend. So this is important from us from a business perspective because we want to follow up on those leads that were obviously interested enough to book a class, but for some reason did not show up. So this makes this information actionable because a studio associate can contact one of these leads and then indicate that that lead, that follow-up on a no-show has happened, and it can be tracked. And from a studio management perspective, every manager and every franchise ownership group can have a good idea of where we are on the follow-up process on a studio by studio basis. And I'm going to move to the final tab. And this also talks about the concept of no-shows. Now we have similar apps to this. For example, we have a member management app that allows us to manage members. And what's important about that is we want to make sure that our member attendance is healthy. And this gives our studios a way to track the frequency of class attendance and follow up on members that we feel may be at risk. And because these screens we're looking at have this write back capability, and the write back for these early applications we're developing is a simple check mark in that first column indicating that a particular task is complete, so that we can track it and report it from an analytics perspective. And to kind of tie this all together, in the past, we had similar screens in our legacy monolithic CRM, or let me back that up. We had similar reports available in Domo and Power BI that our studio associates and managers would have to log into. So they'd be logging into different apps, and they'd have to look at these reports. They'd either have to print them or they'd have to alt toggle into our CRM application. They'd have to make sure they're logged into that and that the studio they're looking at is synchronized to the report or dashboard they're looking at, and then essentially, do double the work. But because we are leveraging that write back capability, we can deliver all that in a single micro app. So we're really excited by the abilities that Retool has provided us, and our plan is to deliver a very large collection of micro apps focused on job specific tasks and workflows. And that's the end of my demo, and happy to take questions.
Sweet, Malcolm. If you could just stop sharing your screen, I can go ahead and dive back in. Awesome. Cool. Give me 1 sec.
Any questions from the audience?
Okay, it looks like there's some questions around HIPAA compliance. Let me just take another look. So folks are asking about when the embedded feature will be rolled out. Retool Embed is already available in general availability on business plans and above for both cloud and self-hosted customers. Cool. And there are some pricing questions in the chat, and I just posted a response here. Right now, external users are the same price as end users from a cost perspective. But obviously, as you can imagine, companies use Retool for all kinds of use cases. They might monetize by user. They might not even monetize these Retool applications. And so our team has worked with customers who are pre-product to customers like Orange Theory, who are looking at hundreds of thousands of users. So really happy to hear some feedback, understand how we could work better with your business. But as you can imagine, one size fits all model kind of is challenging in this kind of use case. But obviously we've made it work for all kinds of businesses.
I saw a question, I think from Jonathan, and asking why we would still continue to use Domo. So I'd be happy to answer that question. We're actually moving away from Domo. So our goal is to be off the Domo platform by the end of the year or early next year. I mean, Domo was a great product for what it was, but we're moving in a new direction, and the write back capability and the ecosystem, the ability to access our data through Retool, we believe is much broader than what we had through Domo, and development capabilities like being able to modularize queries and logic in terms of resources and components. These are big productivity enhancers that will be critical to our ability to roll out a lot of apps that are consistent.
There also looks like there's a couple more for you, Malcolm. Could you maybe talk about the size of your development team and how many folks you have kind of building in Retool?
So right now we have two primary Retool developers that I would not say they're your traditional low-code developers. They're really smart, ambitious developers that you could probably put anywhere. So that's not I don't think it's a requirement for Retool, but it just allows us to move even faster. And behind the scenes, we have a large data engineering team. So Orange Theory is a very data-driven company. You don't need to have a large team. We leverage our large team to make sure that we have data sets that are standardized and approved. So we have 2 or 3 developers working behind the scenes, not full time, making sure that the data that we're working with is the appropriate data and it's been validated and vetted. And then we have a DevOps team that supports our Retool, not on a full-time basis by any means, but they support our local Retool instances. And then we work with our enterprise services team, just from an Active Directory single sign-on perspective. But our core Retool development team, the people using Retool as a tool, would be 2 developers.
Cool. I think we have time for one more question. Malcolm, I know you're in the middle of a rollout right now to some studios. What's been the feedback like from users, if you've had any? And if you haven't, maybe we could talk about the difference between how you think about internal versus external tools. But curious if you have an early feedback on your studio tooling.
Our feedback's been really positive. So, we're right at the cusp of all these Retool functionality. So we have a bunch of applications that are rolling out. We're in pilot with our lead management and member management apps to I don't want to say small, I mean hundreds of users, but relative to our total amount of users, which will could go up to almost 10,000. We are, probably about 5 to 10% coverage, but it's been really positive. If you think about traditional monolithic applications, these large enterprise applications that people have used in the past, like Salesforce, or if you have, in our case, a large CRM application, these are very complex applications to learn, to train on, and to modify and enhance. So, as I mentioned on one of the earlier slides, we're in that prototype, pilot, deliver mode. And so this allows us to take feedback and respond to it super quick. So our original lead management app that we rolled out that everyone thought was perfect, well, it was really good, but when it got into the hands of users, we got a lot of feedback, and really good feedback, right, that we missed. And we were able to respond to that feedback like at rocket ship speed. So I would say, yeah, the feedback's been really strong, really positive.
That's awesome to hear. Malcolm, thank you so much for sharing your story, for the overview of Orange Theory and how you're using Retool internally and externally. We've dived into this live Q&A. There's a lot of questions still left, and we'll be sure to answer them and follow up after the webinar ends. But now let's touch on how we might be building portals from the ground up. And maybe for folks just tuning in, I'll kind of just back up. Malcolm is the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Orange Theory. He just shared how they're building Retool applications, embedding them inside of Microsoft My Apps for over 1,600 fitness studios worldwide. So we'll be sure to share the recording later. Cool. Thank you so much, Malcolm.
Thank you.
All right. Now let's go into a live build session of Retool Portals, which is a new way to build portals for your customers, partners, and vendors. So let's just quickly reiterate what Retool Portals is. It's a way for you to build authenticated, secure custom portals for business and business applications for customers, vendors, and partners. So with Retool Portals, Retool manages sign up, onboarding, email invitation, auth, permissions, all out of the box. So you can use our core app builder, then also have all of the surrounding things around app development be handled by Retool. So I'll go ahead and share my screen of how we built the Pharmaco application. Just jump into a different screen here. Okay. So for folks just tuning in, this is a use case modeled after some of how our customers use Retool Portals today. Let's say I'm Pharmaco. I am a company that provides a website for folks to fulfill prescriptions, but on the kind of the back of the house, I need to provide a whole lot of software for pharmacists to manage orders, onboard new patients, and fulfill prescription requests. So what you're seeing here is a self-hosted Retool instance. I know folks asked about HIPAA compliance. Our customers who are HIPAA compliant tend to host Retool in a self-hosted environment. When you deploy Retool behind your VPC, all data, all network traffic is kind of blocked off behind your VPN. And so data is contained sort of all behind your walls. Retool doesn't actually store any of this data. So typically, if you have higher security requirements or compliance requirements, that's definitely what we'd recommend. So this application here, what you see on the screen is a login screen that's built by Retool. This is exactly what Retool maintains. I've integrated Retool with an identity provider, but I've also enabled username, password, login. You have full control of how you want to do this and authenticate your users. And let's dive into kind of how we built this. So I'm logging in now as a editor or an admin of this Retool instance. So I'm taken into the home screen where I have access to my applications, and we'll kind of go over kind of the core concepts of Retool for folks who are just understanding how Retool works. So when I set up an organization, because I'm self-hosting, I've been able to set a custom domain on the Retool org. And really, when you're starting to build your portal, definitely would recommend setting up all of your white labeling and branding kind of up front here. So you can add an organization name. You could remove all references to Retool within the product. You'll also be able to upload your logo and favicon across the product. So if you look, favicon is up here, I'm incognito. And I can also set accent color, header background. And again, these are all things that kind of released as a private beta. We'd love to hear your feedback on additional things you'd want to configure. We're also playing around with the idea of letting you actually make a Retool application be your login and sign up screens. So please definitely feel free to share feedback kind of along the way. I'd be really curious to see on how we can make this better. This is a login preview. You could also white label your email invitations here. So I can customize the from name and reply to. And at this point, you should see no references to Retool, so you can end-to-end control that customer experience I mentioned. In the future, one thing that we're working on right now is enabling you to send transactional emails, so think password resets, invitations, from your email provider of choice. So this would allow you to templatize your emails, but then still have hooks, create users, add users with permission groups, sort of all out of the box, but sort of using your existing systems. So that's branding. That's how I kind of set up my Retool organization, customize the look and feel. for my pharmacists or my end users in this case. Now let's dive into a core concept in Retool around permissioning. Retool provides you with very granular permission groups to access applications, resources, and additional features inside of Retool, like workflows or even Retool database. These permission groups can be synced directly from your identity provider. So you wouldn't really need to kind of manage and do a bunch of click ops to give users access to these applications. You could directly sync groups from Azure AD or Okta or Auth0, bring them into Retool and sort of map the mappings already between Retool and Okta would already kind of exist, and users would be onboarded immediately into Retool and get access to the right applications. We also would want to make sure that these users don't have visibility on other parts of the Retool org, because as you know, our customers are building Retool for internal tools and external. So you really want your external users to be locked down to only the applications that they're allowed to use. There's also a notion of setting a home screen inside of Retool. So for folks who've seen the demo earlier on, once a user logged in, they were taken to an application, directly to a Retool app, rather than the home screen that you see here. So I can specify in Retool the application that the users get routed to based on their permission groups. And that's a very powerful concept if you have a lot of different customers inside every product. Basically, create a permission group for each customer, have them map to a workspace or a home page, in other words, and get access immediately to a branded custom Retool application, such as the one you see on your screen here. So this is the index page. This is once users sign in, they'll be able to view kind of the apps that are available to them. And I want to make sure that we spend time on the actual development of these applications to give people a sense of how to build Retool apps in the wild. So let's dive in and edit this application. This is just a home screen, so you'll notice that it's not querying any data. Inside of Retool, you kind of have three main components. You've got the canvas and you've got the right-hand inspector here, where you can go ahead and drag and drop any kind of component here, as well as custom React components as well, in order to kind of have full functionality or full flexibility here. So Retool interops with React. You can kind of talk to these React components, talk between the parent application too and Retool. So you're able to have that extra step if you do need to add in something custom. But this application is just a series of links, really, right? And you could, if you'd like, based on the user's permissions, hide and show these tiles. And now I want to kind of show how you can hack Retool with code anywhere inside of this product. So as an example here, let's assume that the pharmacy analytics tile or application is not available to a user. On the left-hand side here, you're actually able to reference any of these objects using code inside of Retool. One of these objects is the current user that is logged in. So I'm logged in, I'm an admin. So I should be able to see that I am part of an admin permission group. I also am part of the all users, right? This makes sense. So let's imagine that I wanted to just hide this tile based on the user that is logged in. I could simply go to the hidden property here, and every component comes with dozens of different properties that you could set. And I could write JavaScript directly inside of Retool to control this behavior. So I can say if current user dot groups doesn't include admin, hide the pharmacist, right? Or we could do something more complex, because I think it's probably incorrect JavaScript. We could do something like this. Something along these lines, right? I think it would be g.name. So if I make this greater than 0, that would make this statement false because I'm an admin, right? So again, you could add all of this kind of logical expressions all inside of Retool. Reference components, reference properties on the user. And now let's talk about referencing queries and how you actually might want to wire an application up with live data. So I'll jump into the editor of the Orders Hub app. So my internet is running a little slow. Okay, great. So this is the Order Hub application, and I'm going to walk through kind of the main parts of this app. So as I demoed earlier, you can go step by step. You can search for a patient. You can query your live data. You can view patient details. You can write back and submit orders and then generate a PDF. And I know folks asked in the chat, how did we generate this PDF? Happy to show you. Great. So let's kind of understand the core pieces here. These are all components that I've dragged onto the canvas. You'll notice that I've actually added some styles here, custom CSS. You can write this anywhere inside of the product. You also have components that are highly customizable. And so you look at this as a stepped container, which is just another container, a way to kind of route users in between different steps inside of an onboarding flow. Again, these are all components that Retool maintains that you don't need to write from scratch. Now let's look at some of the core data that's being displayed in the application. And let's see where it's coming from. I highlighted this table, and you'll notice that it has a data source that says get patients. It has some columns. It has so many different kind of properties that you can add. You can group by column, group by row. But let's touch on data as kind of the core concept here. And so Malcolm had mentioned how you can not only read data, but you can also write back. And one of the core value props of Retool is that you're writing queries directly inside of the user interface, right? So you'll see on the bottom here, I have my query panel open. And here I could do things like write patch requests to change an order status, send emails with SendGrid built in, generate this order PDF once the order has been successfully submitted, and even get patient data, right? So let's see how this table is being powered by a query directly against a Postgres database that I've set up. I have this patients table selected, and I noticed that its data source says get patients. This get patients query is taking in data from the text input that I have right here, patients search.to. And again, as I mentioned earlier, because you can write JavaScript inside of Retool anywhere, I can reference a component as well. So whatever search value I decide to add here, right, I'm already adding this into my query dynamically. So whenever this value changes, you'll notice that my query will rerun, right? And you can throttle it, you can bounce it, you can do anything kind of around the actual query functionality here. But this is how you would wire up your front end to your query inside of Retool. And of course, I have some logic to filter by the patient ID, set some limits and offsets. You know, you'd imagine you could have 50,000 patients. Retool really makes it easy for you to enable server-side pagination. And again, just to kind of back up and give you a sense of what's going on and why this is important is if you had to build this from scratch, this would be incredibly painful. You'd have to set up maybe an API layer in between here. You'd have to handle middleware. You'd have to handle state updates. If you wanted your components to look a little bit different, add additional functionality to, let's say, React table, this is kind of painful, especially if you're maintaining this over the course of years. With Retool, these components only get better over time, right? We're maintaining this. We're getting feedback from our customers, and we're making this better and more performant over time. So you don't have to deal with library upgrades, things like that. So now that I've kind of walked through the core app builder, components, things like that, let's just dive into how we go through other parts of the application. So you can easily build forms. These are all kind of customizable input fields that I can go ahead and set default values, referencing key parts of different queries and other components. I can then also enable a signature, right? These are all, again, as I mentioned, components that Retool maintains. And once I submit an order, you'll see that this functionality is actually kind of happening live. So how did I go from pressing submit to actually changing the data, right? Changing the data that's being displayed. You'll see here that I have the upcoming appointments table that's fetch and get orders. Get orders is just getting the orders that were submitted. And once I submit an order, I should be able to go to edit order. And you see that I have event handlers that I could string together inside of Retool. So whenever something happens in Retool, when a query gets run, when I write to a database, when I create an order, I'm able to add event handlers on success functions that basically tell Retool, hey, once this query is done running, refresh the UI, fetch the latest data. And so again, this is kind of a core powerful concept of Retool here, that you can go ahead and take in anywhere data that's being brought in from many different systems. write back to certain data sets, maybe not, but have this logic that's all controlled via JavaScript and little tidbits of code, right? I'm not actually writing too much code to a point where this is not maintainable. It's all sort of little snippets that I have in the UI. And I know Max is going to touch on this around change management and source control and how you might want to actually preview and roll out changes securely. Retool syncs every application to Git by default, and you'll be able to kind of have a rollout process from dev, staging, and production very easily by previewing both the applications live and also viewing kind of their underlying code and reviewing it yourself. So we'll touch on that. We'll share documentations on how to kind of roll out and set up your structure at scale. But taking a pause here, this is kind of the core app builder here that you see in Retool and some of the changes and processes that we've implemented around this. Cool. If folks are curious on how this PDF was generated, it just calls an API endpoint. This is a public resource where you can generate an ordered PDF here directly on api-template.io. So I've specified a template, and then I can pass in kind of data that I have in that form, right? So referencing the user and referencing different pieces of queries, tables, things like that. So this is a massive query, but you can see, so the query itself is not massive, sorry, it has a lot of fields. But you can see this is really nice and super easy to use, right? So I've taken data from a form, I'm simply referencing it via JavaScript because everything here is an object. I'm going ahead and generating an exact PDF of this, right? So this goes for PDFs, this goes for emails, pretty much anything you want in Retool because you can connect any API that you'd like, whether it's internal or external to Retool. So that wraps up the live build session. I want to definitely move to Q&A here if folks have any additional questions. So I'll stop sharing and go back to the main presentation. Great. So we'll, of course, have some resources on how to build a Retool portal. We talked about setting up the organization and building your Retool applications. There's a lot to building Retool apps and to rolling them out to thousands of users. So we definitely want to make sure that you're well equipped. And I'm also happy to help here on my side, too. So let's talk about some questions you all have. Cool. All right, so there's a question, will Retool roll out features for devs to create SSO? We definitely played around this idea of Retool being an identity provider. Right now, you can integrate Retool with any identity provider that has OIDC, SAML, SSO. So we make that very easy across both our cloud and self-hosted options. We do support Google LDAP as well, but SSO is also something that kind of falls under the purview of our team. So we're happy to help here too around what can we do to make SSO stronger and more robust for you. Cool. Really good question around the sidebar that's consistent across different applications. So this is a core concept that Malcolm had illustrated with his apps around modules. Retool lets you create components that can be reused across many different applications. And a common use case of that is a sidebar, where basically you would specify a sidebar, bring it into one place, have that be maintained by one place or by one team, and then be used across applications. So this is not only true of external use cases. Some of our largest enterprise customers that have hundreds of apps use modules to kind of maintain consistency across their apps. Cool. There is a question around which elements of Retool are separate Retool applications. Yes, so maybe I can go back and share, and go back into the product and talk through what this is, or what different apps look like. So in the demo, I actually only shared 2 apps. But you can imagine what this could look like at scale if you really went out and built more than just the Orders Hub page, right? So let's go into the Pharmaco example here. Right, all of these would be different Retool applications. So if I open this, you'll notice the actual app goes to a different route. With modules, this could actually just link out to different Retool applications, right? So you have the flexibility of kind of doing whatever you want, right? In certain cases, we definitely recommend splitting out applications for performance reasons. If you're having a lot of data being shown in one app, you might want to bring that into another one. You might want to use actually a module would be a good use case for this. But as I'm walking through step by step between these screens, I'm actually just using the same Retool application. So you could actually do both if you'd like, but we'd like to kind of imagine applications as sort of the superset and being able to handle the use case or the business problem. And then inside of there, using things like step containers or tagged containers to split out data. Cool. We have time for a few more questions. Great. Another question around kind of reusability. Is each module a separate Retool application? Yes. A module is treated as a Retool app. You manage it and sort of edit it directly, but then you plop it into an existing application that you might have. A module could also be embedded into your product, just as a Retool app could be too with Retool Embed. Cool. That wraps up a majority of the Q&A. I will hand it over to Max Reed, who will be talking about augmenting a merchant portal in minutes using Retool Embed.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. There we go. So everyone, my name is Max Reed. I'm a customer engineer here at Retool. I've been at Retool for just over a year now, and have pretty much been working on externally facing Retool with Anthony ever since we started kicking off this project a little less than a year ago. I'm super excited to walk you through actually a sample portal leveraging Retool Embed today. So before I dive into that, just a quick refresher on Retool Embed itself. Retool Embed, if you think of portals being you're using Retool entirely for your product, Retool Embed is more of a way to augment your existing product. So securely embed Retool apps within the product that you already have and pass in custom metadata and information about the user. So think of it as a way to release features much quicker in your application. Now, before I actually dive into the live demo, I wanted to quickly pop this resource page, and you'll find these resources in the chat. Main reason I wanted to show this is what I actually walked through today, all of the code we've made public in this Retool external template repo. So feel free to clone that, play around with it, and really see under the hood for how Retool Embed works. We also have here this embed URL generator application, and that's a way to actually, it's an app that we publish to our App Exchange that allows you to test API calls, pass in different custom metadata, and see what it would look like from different users' perspective. And I'll actually show this when we go into the demo today. Now, last slide before we actually dive into the code a bit, but I wanted to quickly show this so as a refresher for how Embed actually works, how that user authentication flow works, because it is different than what Retool's provided so far from an Embed perspective. So you'll see on this diagram, there are three main sections. There's the front end of your portal, the back end, and then your Retool instance. And as you can see with the flow here, the first step, user logging into the portal, that actually happens completely outside of Retool. So what that means is Retool is now completely agnostic to how you authenticate users into your portal. Your backend validates that that user is valid, and then it requests via a secure API call to Retool to say, hey, give me an embed URL for this specific app, passing in any sort of custom metadata from your application as well, so you can really customize that experience. And then Retool will validate that that's a valid request, give that iframe URL back, and then you can leverage that in your application. So we'll kind of walk through all of this, and I'll show in the code how this all works, but wanted to quickly show the overall authentication flow before we really dive in here. Cool. So with that, we'll actually get to the live demo, and I'm going to be toggling through a few different sections here. I'm going to first be starting in a Retool instance to show you the prerequisites for getting Retool Embed up and running. We'll actually be diving into the sample portal code, and then we'll see what that looks like on the front end. So this is a Retool instance, and here you can see the first step to getting Retool Embed up and running, which is enabling the Retool API. So you can see the Retool API can do a few different things, but we want one with this embed scope associated with it. And this token is what we're going to use, your backend is going to use in the API call for Retool to be able to validate it. So you'll see we have all those different API tokens here. The next thing you need is some permission groups. So you can see here we have the default ones, all users, viewer, editor, and admin. And we also have some ones that we've created here. Basically what this is being used for is in that API call to Retool to generate that embed URL, we're going to be passing in some group IDs to determine which applications a user can navigate to from that landing page application. In order to get that group ID, you can actually, on any group, click this copy group ID, and we'll use that in a later step. The last thing that you really need is just the ability to, or you need the UUID for the application that you're actually going to be embedding. So here's a sample one, this coupon manager, which you'll recognize from the demonstration that Anthony gave earlier of the Shopco portal. And if I use our command palette here and I just type in UUID, you can actually see I can copy that app UUID, and that's what we're going to be copying to the clipboard to then pass into that API call. So those are kind of the three buckets, starting off with the API key, the group IDs, as well as the app that you are looking to embed. So now pivoting away from the Retool instance, let's actually look at the code. So this template is actually available on GitHub. It's in that the links that are in the chat. And I won't go through every single part of this, but there are a few different pieces that I do want to call out. I've already gone in here and changed my environment variables as well as our front end config, which are the things that you would need to do to get this up and running. But on the back end perspective, I want to call out this Retool route that we've defined. And this is just defining that route for retrieving the embedded Retool URL. And as far as what goes into this, you can see a few different things. From a header's perspective, you can see here's where we're passing in that API key that we defined previously that I showed you within the Retool instance. And then here you can see what actually gets passed in the body of that API request to get that embed URL. You can see the landing page UUID, which is the app that's actually going to be embedded. In this case, we're actually using a utility here, and you can see the mapping between the name here and the UUID, which we copied previously. The external identifier, and you can use anything in this external identifier. In this case, we're just using a token that comes as part of the login part of it. And then group IDs, which you saw me copy that group ID from earlier. In this case, for this example, I'm using group ID 1, which is just admin. But a key part of this here is this metadata part. And what this means is I can now pass anything from my portal, any custom metadata, into that API request. And now that's going to be available for me to use as part of that current user object that you saw Anthony show earlier. So this allows you to be really flexible and customizable in terms of what actually shows up to the end user based on information coming from your portal. And we'll actually show an example of this as we go through here. So that's it from the backend perspective. The other thing I wanted to show here from a front end, you can see all the different components. This is just a React app. So there are a variety of different components that are not related to Retool, but this Retool wrapper is the one that is going to be actually embedding Retool. And you can see here's where we're making that post request to that backend to get the embed URL. You can see we're passing in all of the relevant information here. And then we're using our React library to actually embed that URL that we're getting from that post request. The other thing I want to call out here is you can pass in data into that iframe using this data property here. And what that allows you to do is pass in data without reloading the entire iframe. So we can show an example of that as we go along here. So those are the main things that I wanted to show from a code perspective. Let's actually get this up and running. So since I've already updated the config ahead of the demo here, all I need to do is just run the startup script. That's now going to start and run this application. You can see it's compiled successfully. And now I'll actually navigate back to the browser and just navigate to localhost. And you can see now I have my merchant portal and the embedded Retool application here. Cool. So we just went from not having any sort of portal to now having a portal that leverages Retool embed, allowing me to navigate between the sections, as well as allowing me to impersonate different tiers of users. So this is all great, but where Retool Embed becomes really powerful is being able to ship new features more quickly. So let's actually go through an example of, let's say we want to add a new feature. Let's say our customers requested the ability to download an app as a PDF. So I'm going to actually pop back over to the Retool instance here, and let's start to add that feature into our Coupon Manager product. So I'm going to go ahead and click Edit in the top right here. Anthony referenced this earlier, but this application is protected with source control, so all the code lives in GitHub. And you will notice I can't actually edit this application directly here. I need to create a new branch off of main. So I'll create a new branch here, and I'll call this, download PDF button. Cool. So now you'll see the familiar kind of developer experience in Retool, which Anthony showed earlier. And now let's say I want to add some features to this application. I'll quickly add a link here in the top right, let's say, that allows me to download that PDF. I'll make the name of this text, download PDF. And then from an event handler perspective, what I really want to do is run a script when I click on that. And I can actually use a built-in Retool function, download page, which will just print out that current view as a PDF and save it. Awesome. So now if I push this out to my end users, everyone would have access to download PDF. But maybe you don't want everyone to have access to download PDF. Maybe you want to monetize this feature, or you only want certain groups or tiers of users to be able to leverage it. That's where that custom metadata piece that we're passing into that API call becomes really powerful. So if I go here into the hidden section, the same thing that Anthony was doing before, I can write any sort of custom JavaScript in here. I'll do a curly bracket. And what I can actually do is reference that current user and its metadata group, because that's what we're actually going to be passing in as part of that API call that you saw before. So maybe I want this to be hidden if group is not equal to gold. So you'll see right now this is hidden from me because I'm not part of that gold group right now. So what I'm going to actually do now that I have this is I'm going to go in and commit this change. You'll see I have that new change here in that new link. And I'll say added PDF downloader. So now this is committing and pushing to Git. Now I can open up a pull request. And I'll create and merge this pull request. So for you, maybe you have different people who can actually commit it versus merge it into production. For me, I'm just going to merge my own pull request here. Great. So now I've merged that in. And now if I switch back over to the main branch, I'll go ahead and create a new release off of that merge. So I'll call this new link. And for the purposes of this, I'll just go ahead and create and publish this. Cool. So now what I've done quickly here is, in a matter of a few minutes, I've added this link to this application and committed it to code, and then created a new release on top of it. So let's actually see what this looks like now in the application. So I'm going to navigate back over to the Shopko portal. And I'm going to go back to our homepage here, and maybe I'll refresh the page. Cool. So let's go ahead, and you can see here I have these different levels of users. And if we go look back in the code here for a second and go to the back end, if we go to routes, you'll notice we're passing in this group coming from the application as part of that metadata field. So as I switch between these, what's going to happen is that metadata is going to be changing. So if I go to that coupon generator application, or first actually I'll impersonate Silver, and I'll go to that coupon generator application. Now you'll notice I don't see that download button anywhere, right? And that's because it's hidden from me because I'm not a gold user. Now what happens if I actually impersonate a gold member? Now I see that download PDF button appear to me. So we basically customized this application from directly within it based on that metadata that's being passed in that API call. So this becomes really powerful as you start to think about how can you monetize different components, buttons, applications, functions, even within an application by leveraging any custom metadata that's coming from your portal. So that's a quick walkthrough of Retool Embed. One other quick thing I wanted to show was this embed URL generator application here. So you can see here, this is a sample application, and it's available on our App Exchange for you to be able to download as a JSON and just import into your environment. And you can see we actually have all of the setup steps for it. So feel free to play around with this. And what it lets you do is run, it's kind of meta, using Retool as a way to test Retool Embed API calls. So it kind of shows off the flexibility of the platform, where we can actually pass in all of that information, preview the embedded app based on different metadata that you're passing in, or different releases, environments, etc. So here, let's say for metadata, if I wanted to play around with this and say I want to test this where group is equal to store, I can preview the application here, and you'll see on the bottom, I can see my app, no download button. Now let's say if I switch over to gold here, I now have that download button. So this is just a utility app that we've released on our App Exchange, and you can find a link for the resources in the chat, and just lets you run these different API calls, impersonate different users, and make sure that it all looks good as you release it to production. So that's it from my perspective. I wanted to quickly walk through this Embed Live build. With that, I'll stop my share and I'll pass it back over to you, Anthony. Oh, Anthony, I think you're on mute.
Nice, love it. Cool. Well, thanks, Max. For folks tuning in, Max just covered how to add functionality into your product in minutes using Retool. He showed how you can securely add a download PDF functionality to an application based on the account tier or account status that a user is. And Max did mention that none of the data that is passed in the API call is spoofable. So while you can easily add functionality, you could also make sure that only user A sees user B's data, which is kind of a nice feature about Embed. Now we'll transition over to Mike Madison, VP of Enterprise Solutions at Proga Digital. As I mentioned earlier, Mike is one of the most prolific developers on Retool and has experimented building for external users even before Retool Embed was in beta. Today, we'll be talking about how to build enterprise-grade apps for external users on Retool. So talking through the agenda, Mike will talk about how he started off using Retool for internal-facing tools and his transition toward external-facing software for clients and other kinds of businesses. We'll talk through the actual application demos and also have a live Q&A. Mike, I'll hand it off to you to talk about Proga and your story.
Right, great. Good to see everybody. Thanks, Anthony. So yeah, I got my start working with Retool when I was part of an insurtech company called Westhill. So in January of last year, Westhill was looking to migrate their application, which was built in traditional dev. It was an AWS application, over to Google Cloud Platform, and use that opportunity, use that platform rebuild as a chance to kind of rationalize the overall development process to improve and become more efficient in how we built software. And one of the things that we realized was that we had spent most of our time, most of our roadmap capacity and engineering time for the previous year focused on building internal tools. And so that led us looking at various low-code solutions, and we ended up choosing Retool for a number of reasons. Most significantly because we saw the biggest opportunity for growth. It was the most mature system and allowed us to build with the degree of complexity that we were looking for in an enterprise application. And we also had significant security needs. So we're working with large insurance carriers that require us to maintain SOC 2 compliance and all of the usual security standards. And so we chose Retool with the understanding that Retool really was positioned at the time for building internal applications. And so since most of our roadmap investment had been in that area, we figured, all right, well, we'll work with Retool. We'll build all of our internal customer experience backend inside of Retool. And then, for the external facing applications, we might go ahead and still use traditional dev for that work. And we got about a month into using Retool, and we realized, wait, we're going a lot faster than we thought we would. This is great. There are more capabilities. We can do a lot of the branding and theming and skinning that we were hoping for. And so we approached Retool, and through a combination of volume discounts and a very early version of what has become the end user licensing model, we were able to put together a program for us to rebuild all of our external facing applications inside of Retool as well. And so over the course of about 4 or 5 months, we completely rebuilt our entire backend and front end platform, which consisted of multiple interfaces, probably 2 or 3 dozen Retool applications themselves. And we rolled out to over 1,500 external partner users. And we also rolled out a combination of unauthenticated interfaces, so public interfaces, to allow for lead ingestion or project referrals from some of our partners. So Retool gave us the ability, through a combination of permission groups, security management, to allow for external users to access our self-hosted Retool instance alongside our smaller internal group. And it allowed us to bring in even B2C, some B2C use cases as well, through the use of things like one-time user links, magic links, things like that we would then deliver from our application. So we were able to work with Retool to understand how best to format the references to some of these pages so that we could then send them out to end users and have them feel like they were operating within the same experience that we had been providing through traditional code. So after about 6 months, sorry, long-winded, after about 6 months of working on that project with Westhill, I transitioned over to Proga Digital, and we started seeing the potential of Retool. And so for the past year, we've really been working with a variety of clients of various sizes, from small family-owned businesses and franchises all the way up to large global technology companies, helping them adopt Retool and really realize the potential of what Retool can do. And so we primarily get brought in when an organization has complex use cases. They're looking to either train their team on how to use Retool and adopt Retool more fully, or they're looking to build full-blown, very advanced, highly complex applications that involve multiple pages, a lot of back-end, front-end combinations, some hybrid development as well. And so we really specialize in those advanced use cases, those hybrid implementations. And so I'm really excited to see how Retool is growing beyond that internal use case into now being able to offer more capabilities for external users. All right, so with that in mind, we've really seen a couple of different, a variety of different examples. We're seeing, the sample that I just spoke about, where we had internal CS and IT users that needed to be able to access the application. We had an example where we had external insurance adjusters needing to submit leads through an unauthenticated form. We had partners who needed to access our application and have limited functional and data access, so they should only be able to see the things that are that correspond to them. And then we also needed to be able to provide capabilities for B2C end users. We were able to do all of that through Retool's permission groups, a combination of integrating permission groups with our own internal application, and the combination of public interfaces, embedded interfaces, as well as your traditional Retool apps themselves. As we've grown and as we've started to serve more and more clients, We've seen a lot of other scenarios as well. So things like advanced cost tracking, project costing, financial simulations, some CRM scenarios. So these would involve things like what I'm about to show is just an example app that we've created that demonstrates a lot of these same principles, where we had an organization that wanted to basically build their own custom CRM. They found that off-the-shelf CRMs didn't provide some of the workflow capabilities or some of the data tracking or data relationships that they were looking for. And so they wanted to build a CRM focused on their own business, and they wanted to integrate telephony solutions into that CRM. So that's just one example. Now, the way that some of these customers are looking to evolve would be then now we've got our CRM, now we want to allow the end user customer themselves to log in and see their own portal, to manage their own profile, to place orders through that profile. And so that's really where we see a lot of this, a lot of these capabilities evolving over time. Is that, we started with building on the internal apps and the internal data management and workflow, and now we're starting to see the other side where we want to provide users with the ability to self-manage their data and to be able to log into their own experience, and in a protected, secure way, and be able to, like say, self-service a lot of their needs. So, all right.
Cool. We kick things off into a live demo.
Okay. So let's see. So this, this is an example application that Anthony and I have collaborated on. Let me find the right screen here. That demonstrates a lot of these principles that I'm talking about, a lot of these scenarios that I'm talking about. So say, for instance, we have an external contact us page. We have a lead form that we want to place on our website. So we can provide this publicly in a non-authenticated UI directly from Retool. We can embed this inside of our existing app. This doesn't even have to be a Retool app. This could be something that we're collecting from a Typeform survey, for example. So the point is we have a UI for our public users submitting data into our database. And so in this example, what we're demonstrating is just the ability for someone to come in and either submit a ticket or submit a lead form to express interest in our product. So after they've submitted to after they've reached out, they want to be contacted. Now, let's say internally we have two teams. We have a team for customer support, and then we have an external team of sales contractors. So we may want to have one group focused on the customer support group. Those are internal employees, and they have the ability to see everything. But our contractors, our sales contractors, really should only see the leads that are actually assigned to them. So in our workflow, we're having the initial front-end customer success team sort of triaging the inbound contact to figure out where it needs to go. And if it's just a basic ticket, they'll handle it directly. If it's a lead for a new product interest, a new sales opportunity, then they'll assign that over to one of our third-party contractors. And so using a lot of the same capabilities that Max and Anthony have demonstrated in the previous parts of today's meeting, we can use combination of permission groups to limit access. We can scale the specific apps that are shown in our navigation. We can show and hide based on different conditions. And then let's say, for instance, I've got in here, this is my view for internal users. So this is my support team access. We go ahead, we pick one of our web form items. We want to assign this over to a sales rep. Well, the sales rep could either log in directly here to Retool, or we can set up an invitation process with Retool portals. We can do all the branding that we need so that the experience feels very tailored. They're not getting a Retool email. They're getting, in this case, a Proga Digital email. So they don't have to know about Retool. They don't have to know about, our business uses the Retool platform. They just know about the application. They know that they're getting invited into this portal to be able to manage their leads. So we could have them working inside of Retool. And and just accessing through permission groups and workspace homepages. Or we could take the same page for our inbound leads and we could embed that inside of the salesperson CRM system. So a lot of sales teams already have CRM systems that they're working within. We could remove a lot of this navigation bar and some of this some of the branding that we would have normally placed around the page if we were working in Retool itself, and we could just embed that directly inside of the CRM system. And as Max mentioned, one of the things that I really like about Retool Embed is that in the past, where I might have used an iframe approach, or I might have made a page public and just had it unauthenticated, but then I would have had to, let's say I had to pass some variables into my page. I needed to pass user context from a parent application, or pass some type of other identifier into the page to make it load specific information for that one user. With Retool Embed, we're taking a lot of that data that we would have passed in through the iframe query string, the iframe URL itself, and we're moving it out of a place that can be manipulated. We're handling it through the back end to generate the iframe URL, so that way we can load the application with the necessary state. We can still have the same power that we're used to loading inside of all of our Retool pages, but we can generate it in a secure way where somebody can't just come into our page and start manipulating the iframe URL to just see what results they can get. So it's a much more secure approach that's going to be enterprise approved by the security team, separately, where a normal iframe approach might not have been. So we can come in here, like say, we can embed these inside of other systems. We can provide the lead form access. We can provide access directly inside of Retool for those external users. And then, of course, we have our internal users who are working like they always do. So with that, I'll sort of pause there for a moment. Anthony, is there anything specifically we want to focus in on? I'm happy to talk about any questions or talk about how we've gone about implementing some of the permission access. I've seen some of that conversation in the chat, along with how we've integrated Retool's permission groups with our internal application roles. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
All right, this was so awesome, and the applications look great. And it's really interesting to see how you have one instance containing both your external and internal applications, but segmented by user role. Can you talk about that actually? Can you talk about how you use Retool's permissions, maybe even permissions from other places, to control what users see or don't see, or which applications they have or don't have access to?
Sure. So broadly speaking, we think about it in two parts. So we maintain our functional and app access inside of Retool itself through permission groups. But then as we build more complex applications with multiple user roles, we'll maintain the data level access role management inside of our application itself and inside of our application database. So when a user comes into a page inside of Retool, we'll look at who that user is and what groups they're related to. Each group will have a corresponding map to our application database roles, so our application roles themselves. So let's say I've just got a simple application with 3 levels of access. I've got admin, manager, user. I would create a similar set of permission groups inside of Retool. So the database has admin, manager, user, and Retool permission groups have admin, manager, user. I map those together so that way, as I'm logging in, I can I'll go ahead and I'll maintain a user ID. Sorry, let me back up. I'll maintain that mapping for permission groups. I'll also maintain a mapping for the user themselves. So inside of my application database, I have a representation of the users who will be accessing my system. When that Retool user opens up a page, we take their current user email value from their session and then we'll map that to the employee record that we're maintaining inside of our application database. That employee record is then linked in the AppDB to all of the different data components that it should be able to see. So if let's say a manager should only be able to see information about the employees that report to them. So in our database, we'll be maintaining those relationships from the manager's user to their individual employees. So that way, when we're rendering the page, we're actually passing the correct information. We're actually pulling the correct information with the necessary filters. Now, some of that could be done via our API automatically, or some of it could be done directly in the queries that we're making to the database from the Retool page itself. Because a lot of these examples that I'm talking about are cases where we're not integrating through a client's API. They haven't built one. We're integrating directly from the Retool UI to, for example, a Postgres database, so that we're saving on the cost of implementing a lot of that middle layer, especially for the internal tools. So yeah, those are the important, kind of the key pieces. We've got both a combination of permission group to role mapping in our application database and Retool user to employee record mapping in the application database.
And we're also publishing docs on how to do this kind of row-level security, where you're maintaining kind of the mapping of permission groups to whatever database you have, but clearly making your queries sort of reference both join on a permission group to make sure that only that user is able to see their own data. So this is true of both, when you're writing directly to a SQL database, you might maintain that separate table, or even via an API where you're just passing additional context about the user and doing that kind of on your back end. Mike?
One other thing I'll note there is that we have actually implemented both of these scenarios with, we've implemented this scenario with both cloud, Retool Cloud, as well as Retool on-premise. And so there are slightly different capabilities available when we go on-premise versus in the cloud, but this type of approach is possible in both contexts.
Yep. And one more question, Mike. So you've been with us for quite a long time, probably before low-code was really like a category of software or a line item on companies' P&Ls. How have you seen the enterprise landscape kind of change over time? And especially as you've moved into ProGat, what are you kind of seeing out there around use cases and sort of how people are thinking about software development?
Gosh, yeah, that's a good question. So I'll share a little bit about how I came into Retool. Going back to January of last year, when I really started to work more heavily with Retool, I was a little bit skeptical about the low-code space. You think low-code and you think some of things like, I always thought about kind of is this like a GoDaddy website builder? It's not exactly ready for prime time. Not enterprise grade. And in working with Retool, I've been happily surprised and happy to say that I was wrong about its capabilities. I found that really that I think that it's creating a whole new category, a whole new set of capabilities for people in an organization where I worked for 15 years in product management. I was a VP of product, and I came at product management from a bit more of a technical perspective. But this has really given me the ability to help a large number of clients over the past year build some pretty rich experiences where I wouldn't have been able to do that myself before. I'm fairly strong back end and sort of middle layer API developer. I'm not a great front end developer. I'll be the first one to say. I was not the most advanced HTML and CSS pixel perfect front end designer. But for a lot of the applications that we build for internal use, we're following common design patterns. These are things, we have tables, we have some buttons, we have some forms. It's not that super involved. And so starting from that mindset, we've been able to really like say, build out rich experiences without having to spend a lot of time and effort on front-end development. It allows us to focus a lot more on the building the logic of our application. It allows us to do prototyping much faster. I think that's been one of the most impressive things, one of the really strong bits of feedback that we've received from one of our very large technology clients, is that Retool has allowed us to build and iterate much, much faster than we could have done using traditional code. So the accuracy of what we're building from an end user perspective, the speed to market really is night and day compared to what we had before. Where as a product manager, I might have had to submit a ticket to wait for a bug fix for a month to get something on the schedule, or I would have had to go through a 6-week proof of concept process just to get a very basic UI created and start scaffolding an application. Now I can do a bug fix in a matter of minutes. I can do I can build and prototype with client on a phone call and say, okay, how does this look? Is this, does this work? Is this what you intended? And we can do this in a much more, sort of live back and forth way, where in a way that we couldn't have done before. So it's really helping us get, like say, to that speed to market and that end user, your product market fit and accuracy much faster.
Amazing story, amazing use cases, Mike. We're so glad to have you as a Retool customer. End-to-end, immense feedback, and I love that you try out literally every single feature that Retool puts out. Actually, on the topic of iterating and prototyping, this is a really great segue into our next set of speakers, Max and Ankush Agarwal from Co-Create. I'll pass it over to Max to give an intro on our next section.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to, you saw me earlier show off Retool Embed in the sample portal, but what's even more interesting is actually hearing from someone actually using it in the wild. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can dive into it here. All right. Cool. Awesome. So really excited to introduce an early beta customer of Retool Embed, Ankush Agarwal, the co-founder and chief architect of Co-Create. They're one of our kind of first users, and like Anthony said, have been iterating on the product super quickly. Just as far as an agenda for today, we'll chat a little bit about Co-Create, Co-Create's journey for using Retool internally as well as for Embed, see a demo, and do a little Q&A. So with that, Ankush, really excited to welcome you, and would love to hear just an introduction and a little bit about what you're doing at Co-Create.
Sure. Hey, Max, thanks for the intro. Really excited to be here and talk about all the amazing stuff that we've done with Retool. Quick background about me: co-founder and chief architect of Co-Create, lead all things technical here. And my background is mostly backend development, like engineering, distributed systems, etc. So like Retool and a solution like Retool was really helpful when we were building, I think, some of the applications, both internal and external. So a quick, I think, step about what Co-Create is and what we do. So we are like a Web3 blockchain-powered loyalty program for brands who are trying to build on top of the next generation of consumers. So we help you build, sorry, I've given this bit so many times, I'm not sure why I'm fumbling right now. So we're a Web3 platform which is engineered to enable developers to build token-gated experiences and token-driven communities really easily. So a big part of our offering is our API product and a dashboard that comes with the product, which allows you to manage your tokens, manage your the community, and really manage your complete program that you're managing with Co-Create. And we allow brands to create and personalize and evolve their loyalty programs through some of the offerings that we have. So for the next step, I want to talk about 2 applications that we have built with Co-Create, and these are using different instances of Co-Create. So one is an external facing customer use case. So this is really like pushing the edge of Co-Create, because this is something which is not internal and it requires really a lot of thought and design put into this. But like we started, I think, like looking at Retool embed beta like back in like March, April, started doing, I think, some prototypes, got into a few conversations with the Retool team, and felt like this feels like a very right direction for us to start building our external facing admin dashboards. Because internally, like as we were thinking about building this, like this uses a lot of the components that Retool already provides, like various analytics charts or like progression steps within the app, or navigation, or like I think data crunching, integration with databases. So this helps us, I think, bring the product to market much faster. And while I think there is some trade-off that like you have to make between like having full control over every pixel versus having a bunch of out-of-the-box components which look really good and also allows for theming. So we were able to, I think, like strike the right balance between like speed and control over the UI, and able to like use the like theme that we had built for our other apps and just import the theme in Retool, and it looked great. Our designer, like who was a little skeptical on this, like she was not used to working with something like Retool. Like it took like a couple of weeks for her to get used to this, and now like our development has sped up so much that like she uses Retool for like prototyping some of the applications and really like hands it over to the dev to like do the data connections, connect it to Postgres database, connect it to our APIs to make the right updates. And this has helped us like move like really quickly with our the external facing customer dashboard. Something which we thought would take like a month to ship, we were able to, I think, ship this in a couple of weeks. And while we this was only for the initial application, and as we started developing more features on our roadmap, like things which would have otherwise taken a week and take like anywhere between like half a day to complete. And this is something which is launched a couple of months ago. During the end of the presentation, I'll take a few minutes to walk through this application and demo the various features that we built. But so far, we've received like pretty good feedback. Performance has not been an issue. Like security model, I think the previous talk went over the security model, and that worked really well for us with the iframe and the embed unique URL generation. So all in all, like super happy and excited about how this powers our external application.
That's awesome to hear, Ankush. It's really cool to hear about how quickly it allowed you to iterate on features and release them. I'm curious, what is kind of your process for adding new features to this application? Do you have like a specific process you go through? Are there different stakeholders involved? Curious what that looks like.
So I think the process for this, like I think I can contrast it with the process that we have for there is another set of app that we built in-house and uses the traditional like React and backend stack. The process is similar, but I would say like it's much faster. So we have like planning of quarterly what we want to do. This is the product roadmap, and we have like very short weekly sprints. On a weekly sprint on a Tuesday, like a PM who like really works hard on the prioritization and figuring out what needs to be done in the next few weeks, comes up with a set of tasks or features for the admin dashboard, saying that, hey, like we need to like work on like this community tab, and this feature like needs, for example, a couple of extra columns, or you need to work on a new page which has these features. And so from there, like really, I think our designer takes a first stab at the like product requirements that like this feature needs to be done. She typically does like a couple of concepts, like this is how we could display data. These are the pros and cons. And from there, like once the designer is happy, like once the PM is happy with the designs, hands it over to the dev, usually within the same sprint, and who takes like anywhere between like half a day to 1 day to like tie up the connections to APIs, databases, and like sometimes new APIs need to be built out in the backend, so that takes longer. But like if I were to contrast this, like a feature which takes a couple of weeks using like design in Figma, to implementing those components in React, or like refactoring our code base and going through the code review process of front end. So a lot of that is eliminated where like really I think Figma is replaced by the retool front end. And I think a lot of the backend heavy lifting is replaced directly by like writing code within the retool code section.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's like instead of using Figma to design, you're actually building the app in retool, and then it's just a matter of kind of connecting the pipes underneath. So it's super awesome to hear. I won't spend too much more time on this because I don't want to jump the gun when you actually give the demo, but I'm definitely curious to hear a little bit about your kind of internal analytics journey as well before we get to the demo.
Yes, I think like this is where we started with retool. So we have like a person on our team, like who's our business analyst and like who's really, really good at like working with data. And I think like she spent before like retool, she used to spend a lot of time like maintaining Excel sheets and like manually maintaining this data somewhere, running queries directly on the database. And like as our business grew and we became more mature and the team grew, like we realized we need something which helps us get visibility across how the business is doing or how the product engineering marketing departments are doing. And so she was able to like quickly, like she does not have an engineering background. She's not a front-end back-end engineer. She has a background in like data analytics and business development. And she was able to like with I think no help from our team and I think some support from the retool team be able to like come up with like an amazing dashboard which has all the details of how our monthly active users are doing or how like the KPIs for our business are doing. And not only connecting it to our like internal databases, but also like our marketing department uses HubSpot and Salesforce. So being able to like connect into that to understand what's the deal flow look like, what does ops and finance have like their own database, and where we have some like critical metrics like a burn rate, etc. So being able to like leverage that and like surface that visibility across the team is super critical as we're growing. So this was also like a very good use and still being developed and built on by a single person who did not have an engineering background.
That's awesome. Yeah, and as someone who comes from the like business intelligence and analytics space, these types of analytics use cases I'm seeing more and more frequently with Retool. And there are a lot of cool things you see customers do, including leveraging things like Writeback and other capabilities that go beyond just analytics and BI. So super interesting to hear that, and thanks for sharing. So I guess before kind of jumping into Q&A, I'm curious if you would like to kind of show off your applications and demo it to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me try to see if I can share my screen. And I think, sorry, I think I should be sharing the entire window instead of the tab. Let me see if this is better. Are you able to see my screen? Because that's the background now for me.
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, so this is our sandbox environment, which folks use to sign up for our service, and it's self-serve. Anybody can go sign in or create an account if they don't have one already. And we maintain a skeleton, which is like written in Next.js and like uses traditional like integration with Auth0 for our skeleton authentication. But really like here, like I don't think like a lot of the folks would be able to tell where like the retool starts and where the skeleton ends. What we've done is really like only built out the login screen and this navigation on top, and everything that you see here below is built in Retool. And I'll also do a quick demo of like how like we can quickly make changes or like update your product on the fly without having to go through like a week-long sprint process. So with Retool, like what we wanted was not just like a admin dashboard where you just go in and like you like set up your API keys, etc. We want to be able to guide users on like how they like what are the steps they need to take to like be successful in our app. Be it like this is step one where you generate an API key, or like link out to a docs and API reference, and also like surface some like analytics on the homepage. So being able to show that was critical. And this homepage design was also something that was put together like in like one day. I know we were like, when we were launching, we did not like come up with this concept that we need a homepage where we needed a guide and like some top level metrics, but this is something we designed in half a day or one day with Retool, if I remember correctly. And our guided experience allows us to like go like navigate internally within the app. So one of the, I think, really interesting features are we're able to leverage, despite this being in an iframe, like leverage the features that are in Retool Embed to do both internal navigation within the app and also external. So this was an internal navigation that I just did. There is also an option to like perform external navigation, and this can be a little tricky with iframe, but Retool handles this really well. So a user is able to come in, manage their API keys, as we saw on the API page, and here really like use standard Retool models to be able to like create a new API key. And these are all, I think, like testnet API keys that we have. Manage API keys, manage members, add and remove members, like add like validations that, hey, you can't like obviously add an empty email or an email which is not a valid address. A lot of these tiny details take a lot of time in front end and can increase the time of build significantly. And I'm happy that Retool comes with a lot of these features in build, and they've thought about like what are the common use cases of forms and fields and validations that need to be added. Another thing that we really like in Retool is like just data surfacing and how like well the tables are built. So for example, like Retool comes with Retool tables come with an ability to download CSV or really like do like a little bit of analytics here, which allows you to like search and filter and sort through your tables, which otherwise like building this from scratch would take weeks on end. And these are, I think, like some like features which we're excited about right now. The feature set is based on like read and consuming data and analytics, and like we're working on a new set of features which allows for like creation of resources. So like in the case of Co-Create, being able to deploy new contracts or new token types, or being able to create new users. So like going from open API reference to probably a page which says like create a token and show a guided experience of how a token creation looks like or a user creation looks like. And to quickly, I think, like demo, I have, I think, the app open here. And like the really, I think, cool part about Retool is just seeing like how quickly we can go from like an idea to like implementation. And so, for example, we have a couple of charts here, and like a PM might come in and say that, hey, like actually a line chart makes more sense for this rather than a bar chart. And I just updated this in Retool, and hopefully this should be like reflected and rolled out to production to all of our users who will refresh your app. So something like this is like makes Retool, makes working with Retool like magic. And something like this would have taken a very, very long time with like multiple folks and POCs involved, or PM who's familiar with the tool can go in and make this change directly without having to like really involve the rest of the team.
That's awesome. And yeah, I can definitely see how that's going to be especially powerful as you're releasing a new product here where you want feedback from customers, you want to iterate on that quickly. Maybe PMs have different opinions as well. So being able to just make that change as quickly as you just did is really, really cool. And being able to do that all in like half a day's work, like you mentioned, I can totally see how that's super valuable. I'm curious to hear, do you have any kind of specific plans as far as enhancing or kind of next steps with this? Or are there any particular areas that you're super excited about with adding to what you already have?
Yeah, I think definitely. So we've started with what we're calling the read flow, where like you primarily rely on our APIs to like create new like API objects, be it like tokens or users, or like a lot of the action types that you do happen via API. And the dashboard is really a read-only place where you consume data that these are the members or this is the activity that happened. And now I think as more users are using this, and we want to make a product accessible to non-developers who don't necessarily need to use an API to interact with the product. So trying to add on to more like create and update use cases within Retool where you're able to make edits and create new resources. So that'll be, I think, the next like focus for us going in next month.
Awesome. Yeah, and being able to add that functionality so quickly, super exciting. Now that you've played around with Retool and obviously it's part of your product, are there certain areas of the product that kind of surprised you the most, or yeah, just specific areas that you found interesting as you were building?
I think like working with data was what was really easy. I think we have like a lot of queries like that we need to use to like surface all the charts and the data that we use. So I think the Retool's UI like makes it really easy to like work with different kinds of queries, experiment with them, and like that like feature which I think in traditional development would take lots of layers to be built in the backend, where you have I think like a SQL ORM layer, and then like I think a data layer in your backend which massages that, and then like coming up with an API to surface that to the front end. So there are so many layers you're cutting off, and like really accessing, giving a secure way for the front end application to like, hey, here's a SQL query, here's the output, show me the data, and like working with that was really pleasant and like cuts off so many places of failure which could happen in these layers of translation.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. It's like obviously the front end you can iterate and build super quickly, but it's also the stuff underneath of the connectivity to resources, manipulation of data with SQL, JavaScript. So totally makes a lot of sense.
I think maintain like multiple layers of translation from front end to backend API to like I think an ORM layer to SQL. So there is like when your use cases grow and when I think there are especially changes that happen in your data model, like it's very hard to keep maintaining these layers, and like it's like a very, very weak like stack which can like crash anytime there is a problem with one of the layers. So like making that very lean was pretty surprising, and Retool makes it super easy for us.
Awesome. Well, I know I've been kind of hogging up all the questions here because this has been super interesting for me. I also want to open up to the group generally and see if anyone in the audience has any questions that we can relay as well.
So do you want to pick the questions? I don't think I'm able to see them on my screen here.
Let me see. Well, I guess one here that I have is, are there any kind of areas of the product, like more from like a Retool roadmap or future perspective, that you're most excited about? So less around kind of co-create and more like things that you see coming in Retool that you're personally happy about.
I think personally for us, I think being able to configure layouts better. I think Retool uses the 12-column grid model, and being able to configure that a little better, where we're able to have like a grid with more number of columns or more flexibility in design would like really please a designer. Although that's more of a nice to have and stuff, like a feature which will give us more flexibility in the amount of layouts and stuff we can do on screens which have high density of data. That is primarily one place. And I'm also excited about some of the retools like AI integrations. I'm only seen demos of integration with GPT, etc. So we're going to be leaning into that maybe Q3, Q4 this year, where customers are able to come in and really ask queries about their data in natural language and be able to surface that data versus say, here are some charts that we think are important for you.
Very cool. Yeah, and I know I'm also personally really excited about some of the AI work we're doing, both in terms of letting you kind of bring your own AI credentials, but also within the Retool product of letting you build and iterate more quickly, tying even more to that value prop you mentioned of being able to release these features so quickly into your app. Well, I think that's it for time for us, just about. So Ankush, thanks so much for joining. Super interesting to hear your story, and really inspiring to see how quickly you're able to release this app to the public. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again. And with that, I'll transition to, let me reshare my slides here for a second. All right. Cool. So kind of switching gears here for a second. We've heard from a few customers now, but now we'll kind of hear from the team who actually built out Retool portals and Embed. learn a little bit about what they've learned along the way, some of the decisions they've made, and where we're really going from here. So before diving in, a quick introduction here makes sense, especially since we have a new face, Luke, joining us. But Anthony, since you've already been on and talked to everyone, I'll let you go first, and then we can pass it over to Luke.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Also, to the new faces, my name is Anthony. I'm a product manager here at Retool. I joined Retool actually as a customer engineer here, where I was building some feature work, building things for customers. Moved over to the go-to-market team to learn more about customer use cases and some of their pain points too. My background's in front-end development, and I work on sort of enabling our customers to build software for their customers. Luke, I'll pass it to you.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Anthony. I'm Luke. I'm one of the software engineers on our team that's been building out Portals and Embed. I joined Retool back in January and started working pretty immediately with Anthony on both Portals and Embed. Yeah, so very excited to be here and see it launch.
Awesome. Really excited to talk to both of you. So I'll start first with you, Anthony. I remember when I joined about a year ago, I think one of the first conversations we talked about was thinking about how we could potentially use Retool for externally facing use cases as well. So that was even before development had started. I know we were both really excited about it then, but now that we're actually here and now that it's out, I'm curious to hear a little bit about how it originated and where the idea really came from.
Yeah. So my background is in front-end development. I got into software building websites when I was in high school, and I was a front-end engineer by trade. And I did a quick pivot into a very ops-intensive business, virtual kitchens and logistics, where I was actually a merchant on DoorDash, DoorDash's merchant. So you saw, if folks who saw the Shopco demo, that was quite literally what the DoorDash merchant portal looked like at the time. And I was extremely frustrated because I knew what it would take to allow customers or merchants to reorder menu items or to be able to update their hours. Things like that would require me to call customer support. So when I joined Retool, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be an amazing use case. These are CRUD applications that I know people can build within minutes using Retool. And that was about 3 years ago. So Retool, as I talked about earlier, really just started with the core app builder, but there's so much to software that needs to be built outside of just the UI, right? Data level connections, permissions, auth, security. So I think Retool needed to get to that point, and I think we finally did. Last year we spent 20% of our engineering resourcing improving performance and styling, and so kind of going into the second half of last year, it was the right time for Retool to say, hey, look, we're confident in allowing our customers to deliver solutions for their customers. Why don't we kind of take in the feedback that we've had from existing customers using these use cases, like Mike Madison from Proga, and hear from them and see what they need to kind of have inside of Retool to feel confident. So Retool Embed was actually our first iteration of that, where the use case was pretty clear. You might want to embed a form, or you might want to embed some dashboards inside of an existing product. So it gave us a good scope to work with, kind of going into the next kind of phase of that with Retool Portals. And Luke will also kind of put this question on you as sort of like what made you excited, and when you joined in the beginning of this year, how did you kind of think about external and the opportunity there?
Yeah. Similar to you, Anthony. I spent a lot of the first part of my career working primarily on front-end web development, kind of full stack type things in the consulting world, and then later in kind of the big tech world. And I'd spent, north of 50% of my time on all those projects, and basically all of them were, at the end of the day, customer-facing products. But we were spending more than half the time on various management systems and custom CRMs and dashboards and all these internal tools surrounding those products. And as an engineer, didn't find that work super rewarding because you're often having to support it indefinitely, but you're not getting a ton of recognition for it. It's often very brittle, hard to maintain. And so as soon as I joined Retool, I was like, oh, this could have saved me like years of my prior development cycles. So I was very excited. And the first question that I asked David, one of our founders, while I was onboarding was, okay, so when do we start thinking about going beyond purely internal tools? And he gave me a pretty nice answer. And then I was talking to Anthony later that week, and he was like, oh, we're going to build that. And so I was very excited to get going on that specific use case for eTool.
That's awesome. And yeah, Anthony, you can definitely see the inspiration in the Shopko portal from your DoorDash days. And Luke, it's cool to hear kind of how you saw this even before joining Retool, and then kind of joined it immediately and started working on it. So now that we've kind of started off, I know we were in private beta for a while. We had some customers like Ankush testing it out. There's a lot I'm sure we've learned as we've gone along. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what you've learned along the way, as well as any sort of decisions that you've made from first kind of launching this in private beta, that embed part that you talked about, Anthony, to where we are today? So Anthony, maybe I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah. So very early on with Embed, right, we want to take a use case, we want to augment an existing product, right? And there's known ways of authenticating users into embedded applications, known protocols like OAuth 2. But the reality is that a lot of software is also built with custom authentication. So the first thing that we wanted to really make sure is that we can support a huge breadth of use cases, whether that's customers onboarding into products via username, password, or using OIDC SSO, or using even Twilio SMS auth. We wanted to build a very flexible API around authenticating users inside of embedded Retool applications. That was kind of part one. Part two was the controlling of application behavior. So Max demoed this very well, of saying, well, I want to pass in data that lives in an external system inside of these Retool applications to control behavior. So those are the kind of the two main components of Embed going into private beta. Since launching, I think we've gotten some amazing feedback to say, well, customers want like everything. They want more than just these applications. They want to use Retool's login screen. They want to use the permissions. They want to use role-based access controls to control access to data. So that was kind of the push toward Retool portals. Now, a lot of folks have also been mentioning public applications and authentication. There are use cases such as what Mike had mentioned, where you might want to build a purely unauthenticated form to let people submit information and things like that. So really thinking about external kind of holistically of, do you need to authenticate the user? Do you need to not? And for the use cases where we are authenticating users, of course, there are definitely questions around pricing that we're learning from every day, around what makes sense for customers' businesses, what models make sense for both Retool and for folks and businesses of all shapes and sizes. But I'm kind of ranted a little bit farther on. Luke, maybe you joined right when Embed was hitting private beta. What's that transition been like to go into portals?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from the Embed private beta that pretty directly informed both the technical and kind of the product side of portals. And I think for both Embed and portals, a lot of the engineering effort was centered around Retool as a platform was already ready to support 95% of this. And a lot of the engineering effort was sort of polishing out that kind of long tail of things to really make this ready for enterprise grade, like external facing use cases. And I think any engineer who's like worked on a project knows that those long tails can be quite challenging at times, but I think we've got it in a pretty good spot.
That's awesome. And yeah, I can totally understand how customers can maybe start to like embedding apps and then see everything that Retool provides for like an authentication perspective, without that full stack, and be like, wait, why are we managing this separate portal? Why not just use Retool for everything? So cool to see how beta's informed that sort of direction. One thing that when I was talking to Ankush before and mentioned like, what are you most excited about? And he mentioned some potential ideas for things that we could be working on. I'm curious, both Luke and Anthony, now that we're releasing this, obviously it's going to continue to be iterated on and updated. What are the things that you're working on next to help developers for these external apps?
Yeah. The biggest thing right now is that in order to share your portal with the world, you kind of have to invite a user. Or if you've set up SSO, you can set up just-in-time provisioning to let users automatically be created in Retool upon login. We want to make it really easy to distribute these portals to users. And the first way to do that is to enable self-serve onboarding. So Luke is actually kind of leading the charge on allowing our customers, if they don't have an account for a portal, to be able to go ahead and request access. So the early innings of that are kind of in development. The next sort of phase of this will be custom email integration. So folks who've already been checking out the docs have been emailing me about this, but you want to build out fully custom transactional emails, things to reset passwords, things to invite users. from your existing systems, Twilio and SendGrid. And so we are actually thinking about how you can leverage workflows and existing Retool products in order to enable this, which has kind of kicked off a broader discussion at Retool. How can we let our customers build Retool in Retool so that maybe they don't have to wait on features? What if we could expose sets of API endpoints to enable administrative functionality and give that out to customers? So it's a really exciting time that's sort of driven by just the breadth of external use cases that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think that's that concept of making Retool as a platform more hackable via things like workflows is something that I'm really excited about. And we're kicking off work around right now, starting with these like email integrations and things like that. And I think we see a lot of potential for that in the future.
Yeah, that's super cool. And for those who are watching who haven't played around with workflows, definitely recommend giving it a try. But the combination of that with sort of back-end work with some of the front ends that Retool provides, possibilities really are endless there. And thinking about too that sign-up flow that you're talking about, I can imagine that being super useful for companies too who are testing the waters with a product and want to gauge interest or see how people would react to it. So really exciting stuff. Well, I know I've been kind of hogging all the questions here. I want to also give opportunity to everyone watching along in case anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, Johannes had a question around expanding on email integration. So what I mean, right, is in the demo, we showed you how you can white label email invitations into Retool. So get rid of the Retool branding, upload your logo, set a from email and a reply to, from name and a reply to. Emails are still sent from Retool's centralized email server, email.retool.com. And so when thinking about this, how can we enable our customers to send emails from their domains? We think, okay, well, we could build first-class support for this, definitely out of the box in the UI. We also have a really flexible backend product called Workflows that lets you schedule or create webhooks for different business logic that happens on the backend. So we thought, well, why can't you just trigger a workflow from anything that gets initiated in Retool, like a login or an email invitation? So the idea would be that you design a workflow that could talk to an external service of yours, such as SendGrid, but passing in things like the user password reset link into that email, so that now you really have control of both what your email looks like and also the domain from which it gets sent from. And again, this extends beyond just email invitations, right? This could be on user login or on request access. So definitely something that we're really looking into and really excited about.
So I see a question here in the chat. What exactly is Portals that is different than what we have already today? And basically what is kind of new about Portals versus what we already have? Because a lot of the stuff you shared with building the app, you can obviously do today as well.
Yeah, really good question. To be honest, we're taking the most important parts of our Retool, all of the things that exist for internal use cases, and we're just helping you make it external. So the big changes have been really thinking about how can we white label Retool, get rid of Retool text while still keeping the internal experience quite similar to the external, right? We want it to be the same platform and same idea of, hey, I want to build external tools. Oh, I want to invite external users into my instance. How can I create an organization that can support both use cases without creating a ton of management overhead? So there's a ton of thinking right now being done around the multi-tenant experience, which folks alluded to in comments, about really enabling separation. You can imagine I'm a consultancy and I want to be building products for X, Y, and Z customer, and I want to isolate that entire experience. I want to create a separate login for each one, but I, as the admin, don't want to have to manage an overhead of 5 self-hosted instances or 5 different logins into organizations. So we want to make it really easy to scale out the administrative functionality there, which again is driven by both large internal use cases, but also these kinds of external use cases. But to summarize, the core app building experience, the core permissions experience is actually not that different. We're just going to allow you to kind of white label and make Retool your own.
Yeah, and that's where most of the engineering effort came in on Portals, was allowing customers of ours to really white label Retool end-to-end, and also do things like supporting custom domains on cloud accounts.
Cool. Jane Doe asked a question around branding. Currently, branding is actually available on the business plan. So we actually took it from enterprise and made it more accessible to folks on our cloud tiers and self-service options. So this is available for both business on self-hosted and on-prem, where all the configuration screens pretty much you can use exactly on your on your business plan.
Yeah, I guess most important question of the day. What kind of dog do you have, Luke?
Yeah, that's Sophie. She's a lab Australian Shepherd mix. And she's behaved very well during this, which I think we're all grateful for.
Cool. Should I share my screen just to wrap things up, or Max, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay, go for it. We round things up. Cool. Well, this concludes the webinar from today. And just to give folks a recap of what we covered throughout the day, folks I know have been trickling in. It's pretty hard to reserve 2.5 hours during a Thursday. So thank you so much for joining. We covered some amazing customer stories where Malcolm Green from Orange Theory, Senior Vice President of Engineering, talked about how they're rolling out applications to 1,600 studios worldwide. Mike Madison gave a talk around the enterprise kind of landscape of building internal and external software and how you can use Retool to address use cases of all shapes and sizes. And Ankush Agarwal talked through how he's using Retool Embed to enable co-create, to iterate faster than much faster than before. So Ankush has been embedding Retool applications and making changes on the fly directly within Retool and seeing that reflect in the product in seconds. We also had some live coding sessions that we'll also be sharing where we talk about how to build Retool Portal from the ground up and how to embed Retool applications inside of your product. Those are technical, those are very involved. So really excited to share that and have you all get started on these two products. All this content will be nicely split up too, so you can kind of pick and choose what you found most interesting. And yeah. Thank you so much for joining. Feel free to reach out to me. We'll also be sharing contact information too for feedback. And really encourage you all to try out all the products. They're available on the business plan. You can have a 30-day business plan trial to build out your first embedded application and Retool Portal. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much.